Is love purely a chemical reaction? Chapter 1. The Beaker and the Bell. If you place a bell jar over a candle, the flame gutters and dies. Remove oxygen from the air, and the glow vanishes as if the candle never knew how to burn. Some people point to that experiment and say, there you have it. Love is a candle, and chemistry is its oxygen. No molecules, no magic. It's a neat picture. It's also insufficient. I first heard the question asked with a wry grin by a gray-haired neuroscientist who kept a postcard of Rilke taped to a cabinet of pipette tips. Is love purely a chemical reaction? She asked it as if holding a string between two worlds, one of glassware and voltmeters, and one of broken hearts and wedding vows. In the lab, we were injecting fluorescent tracers into the nuclei accumbens of voles to see how pair bonding altered dopamine receptor density. Outside, a young couple argued softly under the eucalyptus tree, their hands hovering near each other's sleeves, not quite touching, as if touch itself were a promise they weren't ready to make. The lab's answer was tidy. Falling in love activates a mesh of circuits, the ventral tegmental area firing like a struck match, dopamine weaving reward into attention, norepinephrine sharpening focus until the beloved's laugh seems brighter than every other sound in the room, serotonin stepping sideways in odd recalibrations that mimic obsession, oxytocin and vasopressin laying the scaffold of attachment, printing a map of us onto the blankness of me. Hormones nudge, peptides whisper, receptors upregulate or downregulate, synapses strengthen with each glance, each shared joke, each repeated ritual. On a monitor, you can watch neuronal choruses change their song as two lives tangle. Under a microscope, you can see spines, those tiny posts, where synapses latch sprout in the hippocampus as memory entwines with affection. The chemical story is true, but it is not the whole truth. It is tempting to solve the riddle by slicing it thin. Boil away the poetry, and you are left with a residue of neurotransmitters and spikes. Boil away the spikes, and you are left with ions and potentials. Boil away the ions, and you are left with the quark and the photon and the dance of fields. If that were the only honest direction for an explanation, then a symphony would be purely a vibration in air, a cathedral purely a pile of stones, and a promise purely a sound wave lasting less than a second. Yet no one kneels to limestone, no one marries the oscillations themselves. We kneel to meanings that ride those materials, patterns layered upon patterns, until something emerges that feels both fragile and immovable. Chemistry is the alphabet. Love is what the alphabet makes possible. Consider the first time you noticed your heart changing its gait around someone. Maybe you were 17, and the school hallway smelled faintly of linoleum and pencil shavings. Maybe you were 35, recalibrated by divorce, and a stranger asked about the author of the book in your hands with genuine curiosity. The biological cascade is chartable. The feeling is not just chartable but livable. You did not fall in love with dopamine. You fell in love with a way of laughing, a map of freckles, a shared reluctance to leave a warm cafe in the rain, a courage in the other that called something forward in you. Neurochemistry accompanied those moments the way the sea accompanies a ship, absolutely, incessantly, indispensably, but not as the destination. It helps to distinguish layers. At the bottom, there is physics, the orchestra pit of the universe. Above it, chemistry. Elements bargaining into molecules, molecules into polymers, lipids into membranes, proteins folding and misfolding like origami cranes. Above that, biology, cells that sense and learn, networks that store, bodies that ache and repair. Above that, psychology and culture and history, the structures that give shape to human time, the stories we tell, the norms we inherit, the habits we practice, the meanings we agree to defend with our lives. Love lives across all these layers at once. Reduce it to one, and you mistake the part for the whole. Pretend one layer doesn't matter, and you wobble on an incomplete ladder. This is not a mystic dodge. It is a practical map. Take, for instance, the feverish beginning of romance. The lab calls it limerence, that tunnel vision stage when the beloved's initials drip like sap through your thoughts. Limerence is great for poetry, but a poor guide for mortgages. It can launch you into audacious kindness or into foolish, avoidable harm, depending on the rest of your life's scaffolding. The chemical surge is real, but its consequences are shaped by skills, communication, boundaries, the ability to apologize without smuggling blame into the apology that are learned, practiced, and culturally flavored. A good conversation can cool a bad cascade. A habit of generosity can thicken the thin soup of infatuation into something nourishing. A terrible script, inherited from a chaotic childhood, can turn the sweetest reaction into a ritual of sabotage. We're told to follow our hearts, but hearts learn. They learn from families, from friends, from the books we read as children, from the plots we're fed about how love is supposed to look. A person raised among patient people often secretes patience as if it were a hormone. A person trained to mistake intensity for intimacy may keep seeking the fireworks, not realizing that the quiet warmth of a steady fire is what keeps a home alive through winter. On the bench beside our microscope sat a box of field notes from a long study of prairie voles, small, earnest rodents famous for bonding with a single mate. When scientists blocked vasopressin activity, the bonds frayed. When they enhanced it, the bonds strengthened. It is a beautiful demonstration of chemistry's power to contour behavior. But even prairie voles are not machinery. Pair bonding sits on instincts honed by survival strategies. Those strategies sit on ecological niches. Those niches are shaped by weather, predators, and the abundance of seeds. Love among voles looks a certain way because their world asks it to. Our world asks different things. It asks us to coordinate calendars, to share chores, to talk. Oh, the talking about money and dreams and disappointments and dishes. Molecules help, meanings decide. You might object. If you change the molecules, you change the love. True, flood a brain with methamphetamine and the reward system hijacks itself. Grief and gratitude are both rewritten in neon. Lower a thyroid to a murmur and the air loses its color. Give oxytocin and people trust more. Block it and suspicion creeps in. Chemistry is not a bit player. It is the stage, the props, the lights. But even in a theater, identical bulbs can illuminate profoundly different plays. The script matters. The director matters. The audience matters. And one more thing matters, perhaps most of all, the actor's choices once the curtain rises. Choice is the quiet scandal in a chemical universe. If we are sacks of reacting molecules, what do words like choice, promise, and forgiveness mean? Are they not just labels for neural events that were always going to happen? The philosopher can tangle you in this thicket for a lifetime. A simpler approach is to notice that some ways of speaking help people build durable lives and others do not. Talking as if our actions are inevitable leads many of us to act worse. Speaking as if we could do better helps many of us do better. The biochemical mirror reflects both stories. The choice of story feeds back into the biochemistry. You practice patience. Your brain lays down the tracks that make patience easier tomorrow. You practice contempt. Those tracks deepen too. Synaptic plasticity cares little about your metaphysics. It cares about repetition. Think of a musical instrument. Your hands and forearms are made of bone and tendon and blood. Everything you do is muscle, electricity, and chemistry. But your technique, how you learn to hold a note, to bend a phrase, to listen as you play, is acquired. If you practice tenderness with the same disciplined attention that a pianist practices arpeggios, the chemical you will gradually become a tenderness-ready instrument. If you practice jealousy, the instrument grows tuned to suspicion, purely chemical, misses the way skill, story, and ethics train chemistry to sing particular songs. There is also the matter of suffering. Chemicals can kindle passion. They can also light grief. When someone you love dies, your body writes an elegy in cortisol and inflammation. The ache is physical, as real as a sprained ankle. And yet, from this chemistry of pain can arise acts of courage that have no sufficient description at the molecular level without losing their force. A widow who volunteers the very week she can barely breathe shows you something about love that cannot be explained by noting her cytokine levels. Not because the cytokines aren't there, but because the meaning of the act is what we are trying to explain. Meaning is not a ghost. It is a pattern that emerges from many bodies together, talking, deciding, remembering, imagining. It is as real as a handshake, as fragile as trust. Let's test the purely with a thought experiment. Suppose a pharmaceutical genius concocts a pill that produces an impeccable simulation of devotion. You swallow it, and you feel permanent warmth toward your partner. You are never impatient. You never wander. The sight of their shoes by the door is forever enough. Would this count as love? Some will say yes. If the feeling is there, what else is love? Others will say no devotion without the possibility of betrayal is taxidermy, not life. Even if the pill could make you behave kindly, love seems to ask for more than behavior and more than feeling. It asks for choosing another person when not choosing them would be easier. Ethics filters chemistry through time. Our culture advances a strange pair of myths. The first says, love is a lightning strike. If it's real, your hair will smoke and your feet will leave the ground. If the lightning doesn't strike, it isn't love. If it fades, the relationship was a fraud. The second says, love is a project plan. If you check the box's compatible values, good job, shared Spotify playlists, you will be fine. Both contain truths, both omit the work. Lightning matters. Structure matters. But more important than either is what you practice together under ordinary skies. Who are you when nobody is watching? How do you fight? What do you do with the secrets you learn about each other? Can you sit on a kitchen floor at midnight, socks damp from a leak you can't find, and make each other laugh without avoiding the problem? Chemistry participates in all of this. It fuels the laughter, the stress, the relief when the plumber finally knocks, the rush as you pull the bucket away just in time. But the bucket matters. The call matters. The promise you keep at 2 a.m. matters. There is no hormone for "I'll be here." There are only bodies capable of saying it and meaning it and then proving it tomorrow. The beaker teaches us how love starts and sometimes how it stalls. The bell jar shows us how easily it can be starved. Remove sleep, remove health, remove the social nutrients of friendship and purpose, and all the neurochemistry in the world cannot save affection from fading into irritability. On the other hand, feed a relationship not just chocolate and candlelight, but fairness, admiration, repair after injury, shared burdens, and mutual becoming, and watch the brain's gardens bloom under the rain of tiny messengers. Love is a climate you can help to cultivate. Weather happens, climate is shaped. You may still press the question, if the experience correlates perfectly with chemistry, why not say it is chemistry and be done with it? Because correlation across a boundary is not identity across it. A novelist's draft correlates perfectly with the motion of their fingers across a keyboard. The draft is not the fingers. A city's traffic flows correlate with the pattern of lit and unlit pixels on a traffic engineer's screen. The city is not the pixels. Levels of description are not rivals. They are lenses. Each makes certain truths visible and others invisible. To insist on only one lens is to choose blindness. What then shall we say? We can say this much without flinching. Love is necessarily chemical. It cannot exist without matter patterned into brains, bodies, and worlds. It recruits the machinery of reward and attention. It trains perception to notice one face in a crowd. It couples itself to memory so that apple pie smells like your grandmother's kitchen and safety. It grows habits and hopes within neural soil that can be tended poorly or well over years. But the necessity of chemistry does not exhaust the reality of love. There remains a surplus. The meanings we weave, the values we defend, the promises we practice, the futures we build together. That surplus is not an illusion. It is the very terrain of our lives. Think of an old couple at a train station in the drab light of early morning, sitting on a bench with paper cups of coffee. Their children have moved to different cities. Their bodies have begun to mutiny. They talk about nothing in particular. A neighbor's foolish dog, the ugly new mural downtown, the gossip from church. Every so often they touch each other's sleeve without looking. If you map their brains, you would find the usual suspects: oxytocin cozily elevated, dopamine no longer a firework but a hearth, prefrontal regions humming with the practiced circuitry of restraint and humor. But what you would miss is everything that makes the scene shine. The forgiveness stored like a spare blanket in the closet, the decades of ordinary Tuesdays, the arrhythmic music of two lives played in tune. A candle needs oxygen. It does not explain itself by saying, "I am oxygen." Love needs chemistry. It does not explain itself by saying, "I am chemistry." The materials are the conditions. The pattern is the point. In the lab, after the last assay had been logged and the last timer silenced, the gray-haired neuroscientist would sometimes stand in the doorway before we turned off the lights and say, almost to herself, "We are lucky that matter is capable of all this." It was not a scientific statement and not a scientific statement. It was gratitude and wonder braided into a sentence. It made the room feel larger than its walls. If there is a mistake we keep making, it is that we ask the wrong kind of question in the wrong tone of voice. Is love purely a chemical reaction? Can be a cage. If what we mean is, can I stop caring because the molecules made me do it? But the question can be a key if what we mean is, how can knowledge of my biology help me love better? The first hunts for excuses, the second looks for tools. The first narrows responsibility, the second expands it. So let us turn the key. Let us look for tools, ways to sleep enough to be kind, ways to eat and move so that our body becomes a better instrument, ways to speak that put the fire out more quickly when fights flare, ways to design rituals that keep affection from drying into logistics. Let us understand the gradients of desire and attachment so that we do not confuse the fading of fireworks with the end of summer. Let us learn how habits of attention, what we notice, what we praise, what we rehearse, lay down biochemical roads toward or away from tenderness. Let us remember that culture provides scripts and that we can edit them. If chemistry is the alphabet, then the sentence is up to us. In the chapters of many lives, love begins as weather a storm, a heat wave, a sudden clarity of air, and matures, if we are fortunate and careful, into climate. The predictable generosity of seasons, the labor of gardens, the wisdom to harvest and replant. We do not command the weather, we can shape the climate. To do so, we need both the map of biology and the compass of meaning. We need to respect the beaker and ring the bell. The bell, yes. Why a bell? Because sometimes we forget to summon one another. In Pavlov's famous experiment, a bell predicted meat and the dog drooled. The bell came to stand for the feast. It is tempting to imagine love as a similar trick. Ring the right chime, send the good morning text, book the fancy dinner, and watch the salivation of affection. But the bell we need is not a trigger. It is a call to attention, to the dailiness of care, to the strange fact that two finite creatures can promise to become a home for each other inside a world that does not promise to be gentle. Chemistry helps the call be heard. Character decides whether we answer. In the quiet after the machines stop, you can hear your own breath. You can feel the steady work of your heart. You can remember the faces of the people who have taught you what love costs and what it returns. You can name the names of those you have wounded and those who have forgiven you. There are molecules in all of that, and there is more than molecules in all of that. Is love purely a chemical reaction? No. It is a chemical reaction shaped by memory and meaning, guided by values and vows, practiced in kitchens and on sidewalks, under umbrellas and fluorescent lights, in hospitals and courtrooms and gardens and buses and half-packed apartments on the edge of new lives. It is bodies learning to aim their capacities toward each other's flourishing. It is matter singing about what matters. We will need, in the end, a language large enough to hold the flames and the hearth. We will need examples and practices, discoveries and disciplines. We will need to learn how to repair fractures and to trust again without pretending nothing happened. We will need to ask how to keep wonder alive once familiarity has dressed the day in grays, how to resist the gravity of contempt, how to make room for surprise. And we will need to study the brain not to reduce the heart but to honor it, to understand what feeds it, what starves it, what helps it grow. In the lab, the last thing I did most evenings was cover the cultures to protect them from light. The glow went out, and the room became ordinary. But the cells went on doing what cells do, not because I was watching, not because I believed, but because their nature and their environment made it possible. Love is like that too. It becomes ordinary, or seems to, and perhaps this is its highest form, not a force that drags us, but a practice we return to, until practices ripen into character, and character has the dignity of a law gently chosen. Tomorrow, we'll follow the thread further through the mistakes we make when we idolize chemistry or ignore it, through the disciplines that help a relationship become resilient, through grief and jealousy and play. We will sketch a way of loving that is both embodied and free. For now, it is enough to notice the candle and the air, the alphabet and the story, the beaker and the bell. Chapter 2. How to Love in a Chemical World. The first time I saw the brain's reward system light up in response to a face, the monitor looked like a small city at night, nodes flickering, pathways glowing, traffic streaming down avenues of axons. I felt a mixture of reverence and mischief, as if I'd stumbled behind the curtain and found the pulleys that lift a moon on stage. Reverence, because it's astonishing that matter does this. Mischief, because once you see a lever, you are tempted to pull it. But love is not a moon on a string. It is a road we pave as we walk, a pattern our bodies learn because we choose it again. So if Chapter 1 argued that chemistry is the alphabet and love the sentence, this chapter is a field guide to writing how to shape a life where molecules sing for what matters. You could call it practical romanticism. The romance is the belief that tenderness deserves craft. The practicality is the admission that, without craft, tenderness starves. 3 anchors: body, attention, story. Every relationship you admire survives on 3 anchors: body, attention, and story. Each is biochemical. Each is also an arena of skill. Body is straightforward to describe and hard to practice. Sleep, nutrition, movement, sunlight, and stress load are not self-care frills. They are the soil in which patience grows. If you want better arguments, go to bed an hour earlier. If you want more desire, take a walk in the late afternoon together and let the day's cortisol slope downward before you try to connect. Most couples' worst fights could be made 30% kinder by hydration and a sandwich. That is not a joke. It is physiology with a sense of humor. Attention is the currency of value. The brain treats what you attend to as important. It reshapes itself accordingly. In love, attention is how we sculpt each other's salience. Notice your partner's effort, and their effort grows more likely. Notice only their failure, and the failure grows teeth. This is not magical thinking. It is reinforcement learning operating in a kitchen. Story is the operating system of meaning. We live by scripts about gender, power, intimacy, success, apology that we learned long before we knew we were learning. Some scripts are fuel. We repair quickly. We fight fair. Others are accelerants poured on small flames. Love equals mind reading. Intensity proves devotion. Story is changeable. You can revise it the way you revise a draft, with courage, with edits, with time. The body sets your bandwidth. Attention chooses the channel. Story decides the show. 5 small experiments to run this week. You don't need to move mountains to alter chemistry. You need to nudge it consistently. Try these and watch the microclimate of your connection shift. 1. The Sleep Pact. Pick 2 nights. Put phones in another room. Dim the lights an hour before bed. Read something gentle aloud for 10 minutes: poetry, a paragraph of a novel, even a recipe if you like the cadence. The goal isn't literature, it's rhythm. Rhythm lowers arousal. Lowered arousal lets oxytocin and safety whisper. Do this for 2 nights and then argue about something small. You will still disagree, but the corners will be rounder. This is chemistry obeying ritual. 2. The 20-minute awe walk. Awe recalibrates the self. It shrinks pettiness the way distance shrinks a city in a plane window. Once this week, take a 20-minute walk together with a single rule. Look for details that do not belong to you. Clouds through wires, the patient geometry of a spiderweb, the ridiculous heroism of a weed pushing through asphalt. Speak them aloud, not as performance, but as noticing. Novelty nudges dopamine. Shared novelty stitches it to us. Watch how, later that night, you are less tempted to keep score. 3. The compliment ledger. Before sleep, each says one specific appreciation about the other's day that the other might not have noticed. I saw you put your phone down when the kid asked a question mid-email, or I know you were tired but you still rinsed the paintbrushes. Vague praise is cotton candy. Specific praise feeds the circuitry that repeats. Keep the ledger for a week. If it feels corny, good. You are replanting a field that neglect has made cynical. 4. The repair script. Write this on a card and keep it in a drawer. I'm sorry for X. It makes sense you felt Y. The part I'm going to change is Z. What do you need now? Rehearse it once when you're not fighting. Then the next time you are, walk to the drawer together, reread it, and use it. Ritualized repair lowers cortisol. Predictability is kindness when you are flooded. 5. The third thing. Pick a third thing you make together that is neither logistics nor romance. A tiny balcony garden, a weekly playlist, a shared notebook of favorite sentences, a monthly soup for a neighbor. Co-creation braids reward with pro-sociality. It gives love a place to accumulate that isn't just each other's faces. Faces are beautiful. Projects are anchors. None of these experiments proves that love is not chemical. They demonstrate that love is trainable chemistry braided with choice. The anatomy of a fight and how to step out of it. Here is what a fight often looks like from the inside. A perceived slight triggers a jolt, heart rate up, breath shallow, a narrowing of attentional tunnel toward what is wrong. You defend, they defend. The content changes dishes, a text unanswered, a tone at dinner, but the choreography is familiar. Your brain slides into a well-worn groove because grooves are efficient. This is one reason we always have the same fight. Feels eerie. You are literally running a conserved neural pathway. To change the pathway, change the tempo, name the state. Saying I'm flooded is not a trick. It's an informative report. No one fights well at 120 beats per minute. Pausing is not avoidance. It is biochemical first aid. 10 minutes apart, not simmering but truly redirecting attention. Splash water on your face. Look outside. Count backward by sevens. Let your prefrontal cortex come back online. Return with a timer and the question, what is the smallest true thing I can say that doesn't make this worse? Choose the lightest lift. Many fights spiral because both parties reach for the heaviest accusation. You always, you never. A rule that saves hours. If you can tell the truth in 3 ounces, do not use a pound. When you laughed while I was talking, I felt small. Travels farther than you don't respect me. The first is a door. The second is a verdict. Use the 4 moves. Describe, validate, own, and ask. Describe what happened without adjectives. Validate the other's feeling without endorsing their conclusion. Own your part without litigating theirs. Ask what would make repair concrete. Chemicals calm in the presence of predictability. Scripts are not robotic if they are honest. Learn the ordinary exit. Most fights do not end with a cinematic reconciliatory monologue. They end with something ordinary done kindly. A cup of tea set on a desk, a hand placed on a shoulder, a sentence like, "I'm still frustrated, but I don't want to treat you like an opponent." Ordinary exits keep doors from warping. Desire over time. At the beginning, novelty does half the work for you. Later, intimacy and familiarity provide safety at the cost of adrenaline. Desire is not duty. It is a creature with seasons. You don't force it. You invite it. Guard erotic separateness. Intimacy thrives on knowing. Desire requires a sliver of not knowing. Preserve small territories of individuality. A hobby you do alone, a room you tend to your taste, a friend who belongs first to you. When you bring the fruits of those territories home, you bring novelty home with them. Shift contexts deliberately. Bodies associate places. If your bedroom has become a conference room for logistics, reassign certain conversations to a walk around the block. If every Friday night is takeout and fatigue, move time for touch to Sunday afternoon when your nervous systems are less threadbare. It is easier to move desire from context to context than to conjure it ex nihilo. Speak to the senses. Desire is sensory architecture. Light, sound, scent, temperature, texture. You don't need a hotel. You need intention. A lamp that carves a smaller room out of a large one. Music that signals not emails. A rule that the phone charges outside the door. A scent you only wear together at home so it becomes a Pavlovian bell, not for meat but for closeness. Make wanting safe. Many of us learned that naming what we want is dangerous, rejectable, mockable, too much. If desire equals risk, the body will protect you by going numb. Build a wanting language. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at a 3 for energy and a 7 for wanting touch. I don't want to perform. I want to be met. Tonight I want closeness without outcome. Where wanting is welcome, desire visits more often. Jealousy without ruin. Jealousy is a fire alarm. It is not a verdict. Sometimes it warns wisely, something in the house is actually burning. Sometimes it cries wolf because it learned long ago that the world is unsafe. Name the guest. Say, jealousy is visiting today. Personifying it creates a small space between you and the feeling. In that space you can ask, what is jealousy protecting? Often the answer is dignity, security, belonging. Those are not small things. Address them at their level, with reassurance, boundaries, and actual adjustments to behavior. Don't outsource regulation. It is your job to soothe your jealousy, not your partner's job to rearrange reality so you never feel it. But partners can help. Transparency is irrigation. Ambiguity is drought. Speak early, before the feeling grows teeth. Make requests, not decrees. When you text late at night, I replay old fears. Could we agree to a quick check-in if one of us is going to be out late? Is materially different from, you can't text them. The first invites collaboration. The second courts rebellion. Honesty as designed. Lying corrodes attention. It forces a brain to carry two maps. The body keeps score even if no one is keeping track. In a chemical world, honesty is not a virtue stapled on from the outside. It's a design choice that reduces cognitive load and preserves intimacy's bandwidth for better work. Truth at the smallest scale. Practice telling small truths quickly. I said yes to something I don't want to do and I'm resentful. I need to renegotiate. The longer you carry a small truth, the more it attracts companions' contempt, sarcasm, avoidance, until you need heavy machinery to move it. Promises with timestamps. Vows mean more when they are time-bound and renewable. I will review our budget with you every Sunday for the next 3 months is a promise you can keep, measure, and rebuild trust upon. Renewals keep honesty alive. They save you from the laziness of old words. When to stay, when to go. A book that never suggests leaving is not a book. It is propaganda. Love can be good and still be wrong for the people involved. Chemistry can be loud in the first act and tyrannical by the third. How do you tell? Stay to grow, not to shrink. If the relationship reliably makes you smaller, less honest, less brave, less kind, you are paying for dopamine with dignity. That is too high a price. If it asks you to address your easily avoided immaturities and rewards you with a larger life, you are in the realm where staying matures you. Track patterns, not apologies. Anyone can say sorry. Track, instead, whether the same harm repeats after repair. If the harm is rare and the repairs are real, that is human. If the harm is constant and the repairs are theater, that is a decision you are making about your one life. Safety is non-negotiable. If there is physical danger, coercive control, or relentless demeaning, leave and gather support. Biology does not justify harm. Story does not redeem it. The first ethics of love is protection. Grief, the other face of love. Grief is how love keeps its promises when the beloved is gone. The chemistry is harsh. Sleep collapses, appetite falters, the immune system stingily rationed. And yet grief is not an error, it is a testimony. The task is not to get over it, but to carry it correctly. Let the body finish its sentences. Tears are not failure, they are excretion. Movement matters. Walk, stretch, hold a tree with both hands if you need the earth to hold you. Tell the story to someone who will not argue with it. The brain learns that life continues because you keep placing one foot after another while the story is told. Build the shrine that breathes, a drawer with letters, a recipe card, a framed ticket, a bench. Make a place where grief can visit without taking the house hostage. Ritual contains chemistry the way a riverbank contains water. Allow the new bond. The dead do not vanish. They move into a different room of your mind. Love adapts. You will laugh again without betrayal. You will love again without disloyalty. The heart can hold more than one portrait on its mantle. The technology we swim in. We live in an attention economy that profits when we are agitated. Apps are designed to hijack the very systems love relies on: novelty seeking, intermittent reward, social proof. That is not a moral panic, it is a design fact. Make the device a tool, not a temperature. Agree on phone geography. If the dinner table is a sanctuary, guard it. If the bed is for bodies and words, keep it that way. Design technology to serve the relationship's climate rather than to set it. Slow the swipe. Dating apps offer abundance without context. Abundance can breed contempt. If you're using them, set intentions and intervals. Don't evaluate 10 people in 10 minutes. Evaluate 2 in a week. Remember that profiles are proposals, not people. Choose signal over spectacle. Post less, speak more. A direct message to your partner at noon that says, "Thinking of you because I saw an orange scarf," alters 2 nervous systems in a way that 10 public declarations rarely do. 3 vignettes and what they teach. Ava and Min, the new parents, they hadn't slept through the night in 4 months. Every conversation turned operational. Every kindness was a transaction. On a Tuesday, they tried the sleep pact and failed. The baby had a fever and rhythm fled. On Wednesday, they tried again. Ava read 3 lines before her voice cracked. Min took the book. The next morning, they argued about bottles, but when they paused, Ava said, "Smallest true thing. I am scared I'm doing this badly." Min said, "Smallest true thing. I am scared you think I am." They cried. It wasn't cinematic. It was enough. 2 weeks later, they noticed that they laughed once a day again. Chemistry had not changed their life for them. Ritual did, and chemistry followed. Sophia and Daniel, the midlife distance. Their jobs pulled them into separate cities 3 days a week. They turned Thursdays into a ritual. At 7 p.m., both cooked the same simple dish on video, garlic sizzling in twin pans, steam fogging twin cameras. They added 1 question each week from a list they wrote together. What scared you this month? What beauty did you ignore? Where are you tempted? Desire surprised them in the ordinary. The way Daniel chopped herbs with care, the light on Sophia's cheekbone when she leaned toward the stove. When they reunited on weekends, their bodies remembered because their attention had been practicing all week. Un and Haru, the old hurt. A betrayal years ago had become a ghost that slammed doors. They had tried apologies, travel, silence, nothing held. Their therapist taught them the repair script and the third thing. They started a tiny balcony garden on a rusting fire escape, 3 pots, basil, cherry tomatoes, a stubborn violet. Plants can't be gaslit. They live or they don't. Watching something grow that neither of them could accelerate by willpower taught them a new time scale. Apologies began to arrive before the ghost did. One night, Haru said, "I forgive you is not I forget. It is I will not use it to win." Chemistry softened. The violet bloomed in a city traffic couldn't hush. None of this is magic. It is practice that respects molecules enough to give them better work to do. The ethics of a body. If love lives across layers, then ethics is how we steward the layers wisely. The simplest formulation I know is this: consent, truth, and care. Consent without truth is manipulation. Truth without care is cruelty. Care without consent is paternalism. Aim for all 3, not because they are slogans, but because bodies flourish under their shelter, power noticed and negotiated. Every bond has asymmetries of money, time, status, temperament. Name them aloud, design around them, rotate loads. If you earn more, give more without condescension. If you have more flexible hours, take the errands that time can absorb. Chemistry responds to justice. Resentment is a hormone too. Promises as public work. When you commit, you join a small public project. 2 people trying to build a shelter where generosity outlasts moods. You owe yourselves joy. You owe your neighbors the kind of stability that makes a block breathe easier. Love, done well, is civic. A short manual for ordinary days. Start with the body. Feed, move, sleep, light. It is insulting to expect your best self on a starving brain. Practice micro-attention. 3 appreciations a day. They can be as small as socks folded correctly. Small matters are big, repeated. Use slow words. Say and more than but. And keeps paths open. Make a bell. One reliable cue that means come back, a teapot, a sentence, a song. Condition your nervous systems to treat it as a ceasefire. Schedule repair. Put it on a calendar like a bill you pay to keep the lights on. Keep one adventure per month. Doesn't need to be expensive. It needs to be novel enough to remind your brain that together is a place where new things happen. Protect friendship. Lovers who are not friends become prosecutors. Friends who also desire each other become resilient. Tell the truth faster. Rot begins in the delay. Hold the door for grief. It comes. Make a chair for it so it doesn't take the couch. Remember the climate. Weather will be weather. Aim your practices at the season you want. What the lab cannot measure, and why we should still try. A scanner can show you blood flow changes. When your beloved says your name, it cannot show you what your promise means to you. A hormone assay can chart the dip and surge of oxytocin after touch. It cannot tell you why you reached for a hand after the worst phone call of someone's life. The fact that instruments cannot quantify meaning does not make meaning less real. It reminds us that meaning is a property of lives in context of stories thick with time. Still, let us use the instruments. Let us study hormones and habits, sleep and desire, argument and repair. Not to reduce love to chemistry, but to give love more chemistry to work with. Knowledge is not the enemy of wonder. It is wonder's co-conspirator. The gray-haired neuroscientist's gratitude, we are lucky that matter is capable of all this, is a place to stand and build from. The beaker and the bell, again. Return to the image, the beaker, where we measure tiny forces that sway huge decisions. The bell, which we ring not to trigger salivation, but to call ourselves to attention. The beaker tells us what helps and harms. Sleep, light, rhythm, surprise, tenderness, fairness. The bell reminds us that love requires summoning, that in the noise of days we must choose again and again to gather. So, is love purely a chemical reaction? No. It is a chemical reaction tended by practice, framed by story, governed by ethics, enlarged by time, and sanctified by attention. It is what bodies do when they decide to be home for each other. It is measurable in glimpses and immeasurable in meaning. It is ordinary and it is astonishing, because ordinary things repeated with care become astonishing. I think of that old couple on the bench with their paper cups and their shared silence. I imagine their ledger of small compliments no one heard, their 100 repairs that made no speech, their failures forgiven in the laundry room, their inventiveness on rainy Tuesdays. I imagine the chemistry of their affection settling from fireworks into weather, and I think, may we all be so lucky, and may we not rely on luck alone. You are reading this because you want love to be both honest and durable. You are not wrong to hope. Bring your body, bring your attention, bring your story. Rewrite what hurts, rehearse what helps, and keep ringing the bell. Chemistry will come. It is faithful when given good work. Meaning will gather. It always does when two people decide to make a life that says, in deeds as well as words, I will be here and I will become worthy of being here. The candle needs oxygen. The room needs hands to open the window. Open it. Let the air in. Light the wick. Then do the daily unglamorous work of keeping the flame, tending the beaker, answering the bell, until ordinary warmth becomes the miracle everyone swears is rare.